My family intentionally excluded me from Thanksgiving dinner. The lesson they learned was more painful than the betrayal. I couldn't believe my eyes. While I was standing waiting for the table our family had reserved, a Thanksgiving tradition we'd maintained for 15 years, my wife and children were happily having dinner 30 kilometers away, with clearly no intention of inviting me to join them. The day started normally. I woke up early, worked until noon to resolve an emergency situation, then rushed home to prepare for our 6 o'clock dinner at our traditional restaurant. I was excited, eager to see my family. Work had taken up too much of my time in recent months, and I was looking forward to making it up to my wife and children. The house was empty when I walked in. I wasn't too surprised, thinking my wife had taken the kids somewhere before heading to the restaurant. I quickly showered, put on my best suit, and texted, "I'll get to the restaurant first, see you there." No response. When I arrived at the restaurant, an uncomfortable feeling began creeping in. Despite having made a reservation 3 weeks earlier, the server couldn't find my name on the list. "I'm sorry, sir, we don't have a reservation for your family," the young woman said, looking embarrassed. "And I'm afraid we're fully booked tonight." "That can't be," I insisted. "I always book a table here on Thanksgiving." My wife was the one who called to make the reservation. The server checked again. Perhaps she canceled the reservation? "We have a note here that this table was canceled 2 weeks ago." I took out my phone and called my wife. No answer. I called my daughter. Also no answer. Finally, I texted my son, "Where is everyone? I'm at the restaurant, but there's no reservation." 3 minutes passed. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. I stood frozen in the middle of the crowded restaurant, watching other families laughing and enjoying their Thanksgiving dinner. A loneliness I'd never experienced before washed over me. My phone remained frighteningly silent. Tired of waiting, I opened a social media app, and that's when I saw it. A new post from my son, uploaded just 30 minutes ago. A photo of my entire family, my wife, daughter, son, and even my in-laws, sitting around a large dinner table, smiling radiantly, surrounded by traditional Thanksgiving dishes. And that caption, "Dad won't even notice we're gone LOL." I was stunned. It felt like the whole world had just collapsed beneath my feet. They had deliberately excluded me from the family dinner. Not accidentally. Not a misunderstanding. Deliberately. "Are you all right, sir?" The gentle voice of the server pulled me back to reality. Her eyes were full of pity, and I suddenly realized how pathetic I must look, a middle-aged man in a suit, standing alone in a restaurant on Thanksgiving, with the expression of someone who'd just been dealt a fatal blow. "No, thank you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. It seems my family had other plans. I walked out of the restaurant, my mind spinning with hundreds of questions. Why would they do this? How long had they been planning this? Who came up with this idea? Sitting in my car, I considered my options. My instinct wanted to drive straight to my in-laws' house, bang on the door and demand an explanation. But the rational part, the part that had helped me succeed in business for 20 years, said that would be unwise. I needed time to think, to investigate, to understand the situation before reacting. I decided not to respond at all. No angry texts. No accusatory calls. No comment on my son's post. Complete silence. I wanted to see how they would react when they realized I knew about this betrayal. My phone vibrated as I was driving. A message from my wife, "I forgot to tell you, we're having dinner at my parents' house today. Come over, everyone's waiting." I laughed bitterly. Too late, my dear. Too late. I turned off my phone and continued driving home. I needed a strong drink and time to process what had just happened. And more importantly, I needed to plan what would happen next. On the way home, pieces began to come together clearly in my mind. Signs that I should have noticed from the week before. They were all there, but I had been too absorbed in work to notice. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, my wife had started acting strangely. Whispered phone calls that she abruptly ended when I entered the room. Mysterious smiles when texting someone. There were even times when I caught her and the kids whispering, then suddenly going silent when I appeared. "What are you doing?" I had asked once, seeing them hunched over my wife's phone, giggling. "Nothing," my wife quickly replied, locking her phone screen. "Just a funny video." I didn't think much of it. My work was in its year-end peak phase, and endless meetings had consumed all my time and energy. The week before Thanksgiving, my father-in-law called, which rarely happened. He had never liked me much. "Are you working on Thanksgiving morning?" he asked, his voice seemingly casual. "No, I'm planning to be home all day," I answered. "We're planning to have dinner at the restaurant like every year." "Oh," he said, sounding surprised. "Well, that's nice. Very traditional." 2 days later, my boss called. An emergency with the company's biggest client. They needed a solution before the holiday, and I was the only one who could handle it. "I'm sorry about this," my boss said. "But we need you on Thanksgiving morning. Just a few hours, I promise." When I told my wife about this, she was surprisingly calm, which I found strange at the time. "Why aren't you upset?" I asked. "You're not working all day," she replied, eyes not leaving her phone. "We can still go to dinner." "You're right," I sighed with relief. "I promise I'll be back in time for dinner. Nothing will change." She just nodded and continued scrolling on her phone, a slight smile appearing on her lips. The next day, I accidentally overheard my wife on the phone in our bedroom. "No, he won't know," she said, lowering her voice. "We can start a little earlier. He'll have to work until noon." When I walked in, she hurriedly said, "I'll call you back," and hung up. "Who was that?" I asked. "My sister," she replied, her voice slightly shaky. "We're discussing Mom's birthday gift." I nodded, though I felt something was off. My mother-in-law's birthday was in March, still 4 months away. The day before Thanksgiving, my son invited me to play video games as we usually did on Tuesday nights. But this time, the boy seemed distracted, constantly checking the time. "Do you have a date?" I joked. "No," he shook his head too quickly. "I'm just tired. I think I'll go to bed early." When I passed by his room later, I heard him talking. "I'm not sure about this," he said. "Dad will be really hurt." "So what?" My wife's voice replied. "Your dad won't know anything. This will be a fun surprise. Besides, your dad only cares about work anyway." I was about to enter, but then stopped. Maybe they were planning some kind of surprise. A gift perhaps? That's what I thought. How naive and stupid of me. Now, sitting in the car and recalling these events, I felt like a fool. All the signs were there. They had been planning to exclude me from Thanksgiving from the beginning. It was highly likely that my father-in-law had arranged with my boss to keep me at the office in the morning. He had wide connections, and my company had previously worked with his business. I parked in the garage and sat in the darkness for a long time. It wasn't the pain of being left alone on the holiday, but the deliberate betrayal from those I trusted most that was tormenting me. They had carefully planned, systematically executed, and even mocked me on social media. "Dad won't even notice we're gone, LOL." Never in my life had I felt so alone. I entered the dark house, not bothering to turn on the lights. Only the pale blue light from my phone screen guided me to the liquor cabinet. I took out a whiskey bottle I had put away for many years, a birthday gift from my father before he passed away, poured a full glass and sat down on the sofa. After 3 sips of whiskey, I decided I couldn't just sit and wait. I needed to know more about their plans, about the extent of this betrayal. I opened my computer, logged into social media, and began scrolling through recent posts from my wife, children, and their family. They had posted more than I thought. Not just the Thanksgiving party, but plans for an entire extended vacation. I saw my wife check in at a luxury resort a few hours ago with the caption, "Starting our long family vacation. Thanksgiving. Worth the wait." The image showed the whole family standing in front of a luxurious resort, all smiling brightly. In the comments, my wife's sister wrote, "Finally free from the workaholic husband." And my wife had liked that comment. My daughter posted a TikTok video about packing her luggage with the caption, "Holiday without Dad. Busy as usual." My son, who had posted that heartbreaking photo, shared even more pictures. In one, he was hugging my father-in-law with the caption, "At least Grandpa has time for us." I felt like I was being punched in the face repeatedly. Not just one day, but an entire week. They had planned a vacation without mentioning a word to me. Gritting my teeth, I moved on to check our joint bank account. The transaction history showed a large withdrawal of $4,000 2 weeks ago. That day, I distinctly remember my wife saying she was helping our son put a deposit on a new apartment. Now I wondered if that was true. Digging deeper, I found payments for the resort, nearly $6,000 for 5 days. A major expenditure that I had never been informed about. I continued searching and discovered something even more shocking. In my wife's email, where we shared passwords for financial matters, I found a notification from a credit card whose existence I was unaware of. A card she had opened separately, with an outstanding balance of nearly $13,000. My heart pounded as I opened the statement. The spending was mostly on designer clothes, accessories, spa treatments, fancy restaurants, lunches with people whose names I didn't recognize. What the hell? I muttered, the alcohol making my anger rise. I took screenshots of everything, saving them as evidence. Not just about the secret trip, but about the financial situation my wife had hidden from me. I checked more of her emails, finding multiple booking confirmations, flights, hotel rooms, tours, even dinner at an expensive restaurant for tomorrow night. I scrolled through messages, seeing a conversation between my wife and her sister. Does he suspect anything? Sister-in-law. Not at all. He only knows his work. I told him I was busy with parent-teacher meetings at school a few weeks ago to go shopping for the trip, and he didn't even ask. My wife. How does he not know about the large sum of money? Sister-in-law. He never checks the accounts. Everything is automatic. He trusts me to manage the money. So stupid. My wife. LOL. We're going to have a fantastic vacation. Sister-in-law. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Angry? Sad? Betrayed? Or just empty? I had worked hard for 20 years to build a stable life for my family. Never did I think that would become their reason to betray and mock me. That night, I didn't sleep. I was in my office, making a list of everything I had discovered. I checked every bank account, credit card, statement, message, anything that could help me understand the situation. By morning, I had made a decision. I called the bank, opened a new account only in my name. I transferred my salary and savings into it, leaving just enough in the joint account to pay essential bills. Then I called a locksmith and changed all the locks in the house. I also contacted a lawyer to explore my options. When everything was done, I ordered a Thanksgiving meal from a nearby store, took a photo of my lonely dinner and posted it on social media with the caption, "Thanksgiving alone." Sometimes you discover unexpected things about the people you trust most. I turned off my phone and finished my last glass of whiskey. I knew what would happen next. They would panic. They would call, text. They would try to explain. But I was ready for that confrontation. When I turned on my phone the next morning, there were 47 missed messages and calls. The game had begun. 47 missed messages and calls. I scrolled through them but didn't respond to any. Through the messages, I could see the gradually increasing panic in my family. Did you see our son's post? It was just a joke, don't misunderstand. My wife, 8:42 p.m. Dad, where are you? Why didn't you come to Grandma and Grandpa's? My daughter, 9:15 p.m. You're not answering your phone? You're making me worried. My wife, 10:03 p.m. What did you just post on social media? Call me right now. My wife, 10:47 p.m. Dad, everyone's freaking out. Where are you? My son, 11:22 p.m. The last message from my wife, we need to talk right now. We're coming home early. I felt no pity. Throughout the night, I had compiled all the evidence into a meticulous file. Screenshots, bank statements, messages, emails, all stored and neatly organized. I had also captured the social media posts, especially the mocking comments about the workaholic husband and how they had planned to deceive me. I sat in my office, drafting an email to my boss, informing him that I would need a week off due to a family crisis. Then, I contacted the lawyer I had consulted with by phone yesterday, sending him all the evidence I had gathered. This is a clear case of financial waste and deception in marriage, he wrote back. You've done well to protect your assets. We'll discuss next steps when you're ready. I felt cold, detached, as if I were observing everything from a distance. I had experienced too many emotions in the past 24 hours to feel anything but numb now. By noon, I received a message from my wife saying they were on their way home, cutting short their 5-day vacation. They would arrive by evening. I anticipated they would offer explanations. Perhaps they would say it was a surprise, that they intended to call me after dinner and invite me to join the trip the next day. Or they would blame a misunderstanding, claiming they thought I knew about this plan. Whatever the reason, I was prepared. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I moved all my jewelry and valuables to a safety deposit box at the bank. I also packed some clothes and personal items, in case I needed to leave for a while. As darkness fell, I sat in the living room, drinking a whiskey, waiting for the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. At exactly 8 p.m., I heard the engine, car doors slamming, and then keys jingling at the front door. I smiled as I heard the key turn in the lock but the door not opening. "Why won't the door open?" My wife's voice came from outside. "It must be stuck," my son replied. Knocking on the door echoed. I slowly stood up, walked to the door but didn't open it. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice calm. "Did you change the locks?" My wife shouted, her voice already starting to panic. "Open the door." "I think we need to talk first," I replied, still standing on this side of the door. "Dad!" My daughter called out. "I'm so cold. Let us in." In that moment, I felt cruel. But then I remembered the photo, the caption, the conversations, the secret travel plans, and the hidden credit card. I opened the door and stood blocking the entrance. "Children, come in," I said to my kids. "As for my wife, you and your parents," I glanced at my in-laws standing behind, "would be better off standing out here and talking first." My wife's face went pale. For the first time in our 20 years together, I saw her truly afraid. The cold air of the late November evening seemed even heavier with the tense silence between us. My wife stood there, shoulders slumped, no longer displaying her usual confidence. My father-in-law, a man who had always maintained an arrogant attitude toward me, was now looking at the ground, clearly uncomfortable. Only my mother-in-law still maintained a defiant expression. "How could you treat us like this?" My wife finally spoke, her voice trembling. "We just wanted to have a family vacation." "A family vacation without your husband?" I interrupted, my voice eerily calm. "A vacation that was secretly planned, funded with my money, and highlighted by mocking me on social media?" I took out my phone, opened my son's post and read aloud, "Dad won't even notice we're gone LOL. That's my son's comment. And here's your sister's comment." I turned to my wife, finally free from the workaholic husband. "Which you liked?" My wife protested, "You're misunderstanding. It was just..." "Here's the statement from a credit card I didn't know existed," I continued, holding up a stack of papers. "And here are the messages between you and your sister about how I never checked the accounts and how my trusting you to manage our money is so stupid." My wife's face went white. I knew she hadn't expected me to have investigated so thoroughly. My father-in-law stepped forward, trying to regain the upper hand. "Look, son-in-law, we can discuss this like adults." $8,600, I cut him off. "That's the amount you spent for 5 people over 5 days of vacation. My money. Without asking me." "We were going to pay you back," my wife spoke up, but her tone was unconvincing. "How? With the credit card that has $13,000 in debt that you've been hiding from me for how long?" Meanwhile, the door opened and my daughter stepped onto the porch, her eyes red. "Dad," she said, her voice choked. "I'm sorry. I felt wrong when we left without telling you, but Grandpa and Grandma said you were too busy to join, and Mom." "Enough, honey." My wife snapped, but it was too late. "What did Mom say?" I gently asked my daughter. "Mom said that this vacation was a reward for us for having to live with an always absent father." She bowed her head, not daring to look at me. Those words were like a knife to my heart. I turned to my wife, trying to contain the anger rising within me. "So this is how you teach our children about gratitude? About respect? About family? You're never there." My wife exploded. "You work all day. You missed Tu's piano recital, Nam's basketball game, and even the parent-teacher meeting last month. We're not a family anymore. Because I'm trying to support this family. Every hour of work, every meeting, every business trip, all so we can live in this house, so the kids can go to good schools, so you can buy expensive clothes." My voice broke, the hurt finally surfacing. "But you. The kids. Mocked me. You planned to betray me. You lied to me. A moment of silence passed. My son stepped out, standing next to his sister. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry about that post. I didn't think you would see." "That's exactly the problem," I said, feeling incredibly tired. "You thought Dad wouldn't see. Everyone thought I wouldn't see, wouldn't know, wouldn't care." I turned to my in-laws. "You've interfered with my family enough. I know you." I pointed at my father-in-law, called my boss to arrange that urgent work on Thanksgiving morning. He paled, confirming my suspicion. "For God's sake, Tom," my mother-in-law protested. "Don't act like the whole world is against you. We just wanted to have fun." With my money? By excluding me? By teaching my children that deception is acceptable? I shook my head, turning to my wife. "You said we're not a family anymore? Perhaps you're right. But that's not my fault." I walked into the house, motioning for my children to follow. "Wait!" my wife cried out. "We haven't resolved this yet." I turned back, looking straight into her eyes. "You've betrayed my trust at a level I can't put into words. You've taught our children that I'm not worthy of respect. You've taken 20 years of dedication and exchanged it for contempt." I took a deep breath. "But you're right about one thing, we need to talk. Just not now, not with your parents, and certainly not outside the house that I paid for." I turned to my children. "Go inside. I'll talk to you later." Once the children were inside, I looked at my wife. "You have 3 choices. 1. Go to your parents' house tonight. 2. Stay here but sleep in the living room. 3. Find a hotel. You can't kick me out of my own house." She protested. "My lawyer disagrees," I said coldly. "And now, if you'll excuse me, I need to talk to my children." I walked into the house and closed the door, leaving my wife and her parents standing on the porch, shocked and angry. The decision had been made, and now it was time to face the consequences. After the confrontation, I took time to talk with the children. I didn't want to make them hostages in the war between me and my wife, but I also couldn't pretend everything was normal. "I'm not angry with you," I said as we sat in the living room. "I know the pressure from your mother and grandparents can be immense. But I need you to understand that what happened is not okay." My daughter cried, while my son, who had posted that fateful photo, couldn't look me in the eye. "I'm so sorry," the boy said, his voice so small I could barely hear it. I didn't think you would see." "That's exactly the problem," I said, trying to keep my voice from being too harsh. "You thought Dad wouldn't care enough to check. That hurts me." We talked for another hour. I listened as my children shared their feelings about my frequent absences. I explained about work, about financial responsibilities, but also admitted that perhaps I hadn't balanced work and family well. Later, I heard the doorbell. My wife had returned, alone. I opened the door but still blocked the entrance. "My parents went back to the hotel," she said, her eyes swollen and red. "I need to get some things." I let her in but followed closely as she went upstairs. In the bedroom, I had already moved all her clothes and personal items to one side. "You moved my things?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Not all of them. Just establishing clear boundaries. You can sleep in the living room if you want to stay here." "I'll stay with my sister," she said, starting to gather clothes into a suitcase. I nodded, standing silently as she packed her things. When she walked out the door with her suitcase, I said, "Tomorrow we need to talk about finances. We'll need to separate everything." "Separate?" She turned back, eyes wide. "Are you talking about divorce?" "I'm talking about protecting myself and our children," I replied. "You've proven that I can't trust you with our money anymore." "But it was just a vacation." "Yes, I shouldn't have hidden it from you, but..." $13,000 in credit card debt that I didn't know about. $4,000 withdrawn from our joint account without telling me. $8,600 for a secret vacation. This isn't just a mistake, it's a systematic pattern of deception. She didn't respond, just bowed her head and walked out the door. A few days later, I established clear financial boundaries. I would continue to pay for the house, utility bills, and expenses for the children for the next 3 months. After that, we would either reconcile or proceed with formal divorce. The children's reactions to the new situation varied. My daughter, though sad, seemed to understand the situation and divided her time equally between me and her mother. My son initially blamed me for overreacting, but things changed a week later when the boy came home, his eyes red. The deposit for my apartment. He admitted, there wasn't actually any apartment. Mom used that money for the trip. I held my son as he cried. He had been planning to move out after Thanksgiving break, had found a small apartment near his university. His mother had promised to help with the deposit, but the money never reached the landlord. "You can stay home," I said. "We'll find another way." My father-in-law sent a message asking to settle the situation for the sake of family reputation, but I simply replied, "It's too late for that. I will do what's best for my children, not for your reputation." And for the first time in many years, I truly felt I was doing the right thing. 2 weeks after my family fell apart on Thanksgiving, my wife sent a message requesting a meeting. Not with lawyers, not at some neutral location, but at our home. She wanted to talk. I agreed, choosing an afternoon when the children were at school. When she walked in, I noticed something had changed. Gone was her usual confidence, gone was the defiant look. She looked tired. Really tired. "I want to talk about us," she began as we sat down in the living room, where a few years ago we had chosen each piece of furniture together. "Us," I repeated, feeling the word strange in my mouth. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice slightly trembling. "About what happened. About why I did it." I sat silently, letting her speak. "We've been living parallel lives for too long, Tom. You with your work, me with the kids and my own social life. We don't share anything with each other anymore." "Is that a reason to deceive me and mock me?" I asked, unable to hide the bitterness in my voice. "No, that's not the reason," she admitted, looking down. "That's the reason we grew apart. The deception. I don't know how to explain it. I just felt like you weren't there anymore, like you had abandoned us long ago." "I was working to support the family," I protested. "For all of us." "I know," she nodded. "But sometimes we needed you present more than the things you bought us." Her words unexpectedly hit a truth that I had been trying to avoid. I had taken pride in my ability to provide, in the beautiful house, in good schools for the children, in luxurious vacations. But perhaps, in the process, I had forgotten that a family needs more than that. "That doesn't justify what you did," I said. "I know," she admitted. "Nothing justifies it. I lost control. The money, the anger, the feeling of abandonment. It all became too much." We sat in silence for a long time. The ticking of the wall clock, our 10th wedding anniversary gift, seemed to echo in the empty room. "The trip," she finally spoke, "was originally meant to be a gift for you." I raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Really?" she insisted. "We were going to book everything, prepare a real family vacation, and bring you there as a surprise. So you wouldn't have to worry about planning or costs." "What changed?" "My parents," she sighed. "They started saying you would never agree to go, that you would cancel at the last minute because of work. And then, I don't know. Everything became distorted. The surprise plan turned into a secret plan, then into a plan to exclude you." "And you thought I wouldn't find out?" "I thought you wouldn't care enough to find out," she admitted, her words like a dagger straight to my heart. "You were wrong," I said simply. "I know," she nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "I was wrong about everything." She took an envelope from her bag and placed it on the table. "Here's that credit card and the related documents. I've paid off the debt with my own money. And here's a check refunding the money spent on the trip." I looked at the envelope but didn't reach for it. "Money isn't the biggest issue here, you know that," I said. "The issue is trust. And it's been broken." "I know," she said softly. "I just want you to know that I have the receipts here. The time for lies is over." 3 months after that fateful Thanksgiving day, my life was completely different. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, I wake up early and go to the local swimming pool. Swimming, an activity I had abandoned as a college student, has now become precious time for myself. The regular arm strokes, the sound of water hitting the edges of the pool, the feeling of tranquility after finishing, all have become an essential part of my new life. I've also started reconnecting with old friends, people I had distanced myself from for many years because I was too busy with work. Every Friday, we meet at the local bar, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to watch a game, but always for me to remind myself that life isn't just about work and family responsibilities. My son, though still living with his mother, comes to my house every Saturday. We call it Adulting Day. I teach him how to budget, cook basic meals, and perform small maintenance tasks around the house. The boy, now a freshman in college, is gradually rebuilding his relationship with me. "I think I misunderstood you all this time," he admitted one evening, as we fixed a leaking faucet together. "I always thought you only cared about work and money." "And you think differently now?" I asked. "I think you cared too much about taking care of us and forgot to take care of yourself," he replied. "And maybe, we didn't appreciate that enough." My daughter balances her time between both families, trying her best not to abandon anyone. She's become the unofficial mediator between me and my ex-wife. Yes, ex-wife. The divorce papers were delivered a month ago. Not from me, but from her. A divorce with reasonable and fair terms, no outrageous demands, no request for large alimony. Simply an acknowledgement that we couldn't fix what was broken. "I think we need to start over," she said when handing me the papers. "Separately, but better." I didn't object. A part of me still loves her, will always love her as the mother of my children. But trust, once lost, is hard to fully regain. Last week, I changed my relationship status on social media to "It's complicated," a label that seemed meant for teenagers but perfectly fits my current situation. Because it is complicated, but no longer as painful as before. On a Sunday afternoon, as I was preparing dinner alone, the doorbell rang. It was my ex-father-in-law, a man I thought I would never want to see again. "I came to apologize," he said, his voice lowered. "I interfered too deeply in your family." I invited him in, poured him a glass of whiskey, the drink that had comforted me on that lonely Thanksgiving night. When he left, I no longer felt hatred or bitterness. Just a strange sense of peace, as if a chapter in my life had truly closed, and a new one, though not perfect but perhaps better, was opening before me.